Okay, it's no secret. I'm overweight, I don't eat right, I work way too much, and I have an unnatural passion for demand planning and predictive analytics. I think it's time I need a life coach, and I got just the one for us. Let's get to it. Welcome. Another episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your out of shape but passionate host, Eric Wilson. You can find me at eric@ibf.org, eric@ibf.org. This is IBF On Demand. We have a sponsor for this, Arkiva, your one-plan s&op software solution. Thank them for being on board. And we have you on board as well. 2,000 and growing watching right now, probably more than that actually watching. But 2,000 is on the community and YouTube. Please continue, like, share, subscribe. Also, though, look at IBF and becoming a member there, because that is a even larger community. Over 50,000 members worldwide of people that are business forecasting, demand planning, predictive analytics, s&op, related fields. People in the field just like yourself, over 50,000 members worldwide. Consider joining as well, becoming a member of IBF. All the benefits available, all the past journals, discounts to conferences, videos. You can watch past conferences on there as well. So there's a wealth of information you can get, a wealth of tools available for you as well. So consider becoming a member of IBF at ibf.org. Not only join here at YouTube, but also become a member there as well. Become 50,001. This episode today, we're going to go a little bit softer episode than what we have in the past. I got a question for you. What is the top skill in everything I just talked about? Demand planning, forecasting, predictive analytics, s&op, those fields. What's the top skills that's going to be needed in 5 years? I'll give you a second. If you said technical or analytical skills, you're actually in the minority. IBF actually did a survey. We did a couple surveys on this, looking at where things are going to be 5 years from, and the majority of the people actually looked at the softer skills as what's going to be needed 5, 6, 7 years from now. The Wall Street Journal would tend to agree with you as well. They did a survey of over 900 executives, and 92% cited the softer skills were more important. One other example is Google. Google actually looked at their qualities of the top executives they had in their company. And the STEM, which is, the science, the technology, the engineering, the math, those actually came in last when you're looking at Google of what made up their top executives. So we're going to do a whole episode right now, not only talking about the soft skills, but exactly what those mean to you and your organization and how do you build them. A key question then, obviously, is what are the soft skills? What are they? How do you build or cultivate them in your team? How do you improve them and prepare yourself? And FYI, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Those surveys I talked about, I'm going to tell you what the top 3 were for IBF members that took this survey, but I'm going to wait till after an interview. This is what we call a teaser, to keep you on board through this, because I know some people drop off after 6 minutes of this anyway. So I want you to keep at least to the 15, 20-minute mark in this podcast. So to keep you on, I give you a teaser. I'm going to tell you what the top 3 surveyed skills are we're going to need in 5 years. And you may be surprised exactly what those are. Before then, I do want to get to an interview. And I have to admit, this topic, a little bit outside my expertise. So I'm excited to have someone who is an expert in this field. She was actually at our leadership forum a couple weeks back when I'm recording this. And did a phenomenal job on the leadership forum talking about really the people side of predictive analytics, demand planning, s&op. And she really was enlightening on the people side of it. And she's also a certified life coach, I found out as well. So she has a little bit different perspective on this. With that, I'm pleased to welcome Jessica Lackey. She's a Senior Director of Sales and Operations Planning at Electrolux. She's a certified professional coach and holistic nutritionist. She's a multifaceted and born leader and brings these disciplines together, driving planning and supply chain improvements while helping professionals moving from surviving to thriving. Prior to Electrolux, she worked at top organizations like Nike and Apple. She has an MBA from Harvard Business School. And as I said, she's a certified from the IPEC in life coaching. Help me welcome Jessica. So welcome, Jessica. Thanks for being part of this podcast. Excited to have you on board today. I need all the help I can get. So it's great that you came on this podcast to help me, but also kind of help the audience understand exactly, what soft skills and how we're going to develop them in our workforce and ourselves going forward. So thank you.
Super glad to be here.
Great. First of all, let's really talk about that, core competency, soft skill. I guess you call it a lot of different things. I think it's fair to really define exactly what we're talking about in your own mind when we are talking about those softer skills or what a core competency of a demand planner would be.
So I think most people think that the core competencies of a demand planner are analytics and statistical modeling and Excel skills and presentation skills. I don't want to forget what that one. But really what I see is competencies that aren't covered most of the time are what you kind of called soft skills, learning agility, relationship management, creativity, and really your overall how you show up in the world. And I think that's going to become much more as a core competency in the future as we continue to see AI enter the scene.
Would you put like critical thinking skills in there anywhere type situation?
I think so, but that's one of those that kind of goes in that learning agility, growth orientation.
Okay.
Critical thinking goes in there as well.
That's
How
fair.
do you distinguish what's important and not important, and especially as a planner?
That's fair. So then my next question would be then, are those learned or taught type of skills?
They're both. I think the learn piece is the awareness and the consciousness that this is a skill that I as a planner need to develop, and this can all be taught. But it takes some seeking to the phrase is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So how do we illuminate the planning community that as we move into the future, you have to be a student of these softer competencies in order to be a successful demand planner in the future.
Okay, so now we get to have some fun because we have an audience watching you right now. How do we get the students ready? How do we make them understand that, hey, it's great if you learn R and Python and you have these technical skills now, but you really need to come out of your shell and you need to understand what you don't know right now that you will need to know going forward. How do you make them the students?
I think there's a bit of a using the data and meeting them where they are to say how much error is caused by not having good relationships with marketing, with product development. How much error is attributed to that? How much error does your leadership team not really buy into your solutions because there's no relationship developed? So it's almost if your forecast accuracy is 95%, you probably don't need to do this. If there's anything lower than that, there's an opportunity here to expand the shared pool of knowledge that our planners need to have access to.
It's a great way of putting it. I never thought of really putting it in relationship to our process and our outputs. We may not be getting everything we can out of this process because of lacking some of these soft skills. I think it's pretty much what you're saying now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And exactly. In our process, we have checklists as one of our, it's another skill that can be learned. We have checklists for every person in the process we need to talk to because we run on a drumbeat. We run on a weekly, monthly process. Other companies don't. So we're going to be on the offense of collecting that information from our constituents in a way that's going to make our output better. But again, that requires prioritization and goal setting and relationship management so that marketing takes the meeting and they show up with what information you need.
Okay. So we need to admit what we don't know, admit what we maybe are lacking in, become the students. At that point, you now are willing to find that teacher, And that teacher can come a lot of different forms. I mean, if you don't go after a life coach like yourself to really help develop those skills in your company or individually, what can someone do to really find those core competencies, those soft skills, and start developing them inside their teams or themselves? What tools are available out there right now?
So there's lots of tools, and a lot of them they're on their books and their podcasts, and they're learning and listening to TED Talks from mentors that are available. Simon Sinek does a great Start With Why podcast and TED Talk.
Love that one.
Exactly. So how does your team, can you do team deep dives, team lunch and learns, book clubs, podcast discussions, and bring in or listen to speakers that kind of talk about some of those skills and how we bring those into our corporate America.
Okay. Now, you're doing a lot there as far as, your team development types. You're bringing some of those things into your management, into your organization there as well. I think that's what you're doing in helping develop teams instead of just, I loved when I listened to you talk at the Leadership Forum. I picked up on these things that you wasn't just teaching how to do a formula. You were developing teams. And I think that's really, a great thing that managers need to do. So you're bringing those things you just talked about, those TED Talks, books into your teams is what you're doing, correct?
It's exactly what we're doing. We've looked across our team. We do some pretty deep dive career development work using people's Myers-Briggs, people's strength finders, really what are the strengths in our team and what are the opportunities? And then we're creating conversations around where our development gaps are from a team perspective, and bringing that dialogue through book club, through strategic offsites where we spend as much time about the how as we do about the what.
Now, you mentioned you had a book club. Actually, you did a book club for your team there before COVID, obviously. You kind of zoomed out, you mentioned now. But before then, you were actually meeting with a book club then, wasn't you?
Yeah, we brought that in to our team. And part of the reason we did that is because I'm a learner. But how do we give our teams the shared knowledge and shared language so that we can have these conversations? Actually, one of my direct reports actually became a life coach as well. So now we've got life coach shorthand. We're from the same program, so we've got some life coach shorthand about. We talk about like what's holding you back, what's your limiting belief in the situation, and we can have that shared language. And so I find it's important to bring that into the team as a collective so that we can have the dialogue. Because first is awareness that these are concepts, and the second is how do you have a conversation about it.
It's great. And I'm assuming some of those books were, like the business forecasting book by Dr. Jane, and then my upcoming book, Predictive Analytics for Business Forecasting. Those were the books that you were reading, right?
Yes. Yes.
Good answer.
We were reading books like Crucial Conversations, The Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High, reading a book called Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, which is about bringing kind of your vulnerable self to work in braving the wilderness. And we also did Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass, because really we find that what's stopping people a lot from like claiming the life they want to live and the career success they want is the stories we tell ourselves based on our past experience or what we assume might happen. But we have the power to change our future by rethinking about our past and what stories did we learn from our past and how we reframe that for how do we want to live in the future.
It is great. I mean, a lot of those books you're talking about are on my bookshelf right now. I mean, people don't know, but half my books aren't exactly the technical books that I read every day. I'm weird. I actually read those and enjoy them. But I also have those, Start With Why, those books on my bookshelf as well that I get as much out of, if not more sometimes, because it helps me personally examine and grow. And that's what I think everybody really needs to do. And I appreciate that you're taking that approach with your team. You mentioned the Myers-Briggs, and then also you mentioned the Strength Finder. A huge proponent of that. I actually used to do that with my teams. When I'd come in on board with companies, I would actually have my team I'd pay for the Strength Finder, get in the book so they would understand it. We'd be talking the same language because I really think that's a That's a key concept in growing those strengths, opposed to really focusing on the weaknesses that you may not get that much return on your investment with. But if you can really expand those strengths in people, I think that is something that you can see benefits immediately inside, and then playing off those strengths inside your organization. I mean, you mentioned the Strength Finder. Are you utilizing that a lot in your organization?
Oh, we're utilizing it some, but we also, I found a different, it's called the Spark type. It's Jonathan Fields runs the Good Life Project, and he's got
Okay.
it's a assessment that's about what sparks you inside. And so
Perfect.
we've got some that are creators, and some that are kind of nurturers, and some in the middle that are in the more of the kind of the curation and management side of the house. So we actually, it was they had fun names, but we actually, when we were thinking about our roadmap for priorities, projects and priorities for the next year, we're putting teams together that we always put one on the more creation, like analytical side of the house, and one on more of the people care about the folks side of the house. And we put those on projects together so that we make sure we bring the whole team along, so that we're making sure we have analyze and come up with the right result, but that we're also tagging it with someone who can help make sure that it's going to have change adoption in the organization. So we're not just thinking about strengths as a person and what sparks you as a person, but how do we combine the strengths and the opportunities for our team to be 1 + 1 is 3.
So if we had to then really define, because I mean, I'm hoping that the audience is enjoying this as much as I'm enjoying speaking with you, and they're becoming the students. Now you gave some great resources there. I'm actually going to check out that Spark myself and check that, because I'm always interested in those. Check those things out. So you have some resources. Let's focus then, Lori, in 5 years, what are the top 3? You listed at the beginning, different types of softer skills, and you mentioned analytics wasn't going to be one of the top ones, and Google and 900 executives in Wall Street Journal and IBF survey, they all agreed with you. But if you had to look at those top 3, in your opinion, what would the top 3 be?
I'm going to give top 3, and then I'm going to give one overarching, because I can't choose just 3. I think
Okay.
Number 1 is going to be relationships, and active listening. We have one mouth, 2 ears for a reason. How are we active listening to build those relationships? The second, I think, is actually going to be kind of that productivity and critical thinking goes together, about how do you know what's the most important thing to do when, and how do you make time for it? Because you can analyze up and down the chain, but if you don't know what's critically important to run your business and planning for it, that's a skill. And then I think the third is learning agility. How do we learn? Being able to be in that growth mindset. But overall, I think the overarching one that's not really talked about is definitely more of like the soft skill, is the rewriting your narrative so that you're in choice in your life. So it's really easy to be playing the victim and be like, oh, this person didn't give me this information, or this person didn't take my recommendation, or it's really easy to kind of play that victim. How do we understand what limitations we're putting on ourselves, and say, no, I'm choosing to be here. I'm choosing to feel this way. What's a different way to look at situations, and how can I be in choice about developing relationships, developing my career, and developing my skills so that I can continue to grow as a planner? Those are the types of, that's like the overarching thing that says, I get to choose how to live my life. And how am I choosing to think? How am I choosing to live my life? And if it's not working for me, how do I change that?
So that's just a personal responsibility then, is in essence, is what you're talking about there.
Yeah, there may be real limitations on, hey, this person doesn't really want to meet with me or something like that. But there's how do I think about that? How do I respond to that? How do I internalize that? And how do I take extreme ownership of my thoughts, of my stories, of what's working for me?
And that's interesting, because I actually was doing a podcast on, your career. And one of the things I stress in that is you need to own it. You can't wait for somebody else to develop your, ladder and, what you need to do. You need to own it. And I think that's what you're talking about. You need to own not only your career, but a lot of your life choices and what you're doing then as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's how do we go from the world, that can be really easy to slip into a feeling like, well, I'm in this job. Well, you're choosing to be in the job. And at some on some level, you're choosing your current life through habits, through thought patterns, through active decisions you're making every day.
So, and with that, there's consequences to decisions, but also rewards to decisions that you may make every day then as well.
Exactly.
So if I choose to take a donut and put it in my mouth, I have a consequence and I have a reward to that, right?
Exactly. It tastes good, and it relieves maybe some stress. But again, there's a reason that's your brain has decided that that's a play you want to run.
Because it gives me reward, and the reward's outweighing my consequences right now, unfortunately. I'm working on that. Maybe you can help me after this podcast on that one, because I need help with that one, but yes.
Yeah, but I think that's the one that goes kind of above all of them, which is kind of the time and prioritization management, relationships, and learning agility is that overall like ownership of your life.
Okay. So bringing that back to the demand planner, sitting in a cubicle that's listening to you talking to them right now, and they really feel helpless. They feel, hey, I'm just putting out the numbers. No one's going to be listening anyway. I got to, pretty much an aggregator. I just take this information and I know there's so much more we could do with this forecast here. And they're really feeling kind of helpless right now.
Yep.
I mean, give them hope. How do we lift them up to really develop so they not only survive but thrive?
I think it's part of it is imagining a different outcome and seeing that there is a potential for a different outcome where they do listen to your numbers. You aren't just an aggregator. And what would be the conditions in which that were to be true? And then what are the steps to go get that? And putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Okay, well, I'm just the aggregator. This doesn't go anywhere. What's the point of view of the other person? What's their shared experience with your numbers? What's their experience with your forecast? What in their scope is keeping them from using your numbers, and almost getting to know them and because you're looking at it, you're both having that same experience from two different angles. Put yourself in their shoes, and how can you kind of understand their point of view? And then how would you like to change their point of view? How would you like to show up differently based on what their experience of the situation could be?
And I think a lot of what you just talked about in understanding their point of view is that active listening that you talked about, understanding them and how you can, communicate better is part of that learning agility part. I mean, everything you talked about there was also an essence or parts of other soft skills that you've mentioned already. And none of it was, hey, I knew how to do a triple exponential smoothing model and explain how my error was. That wasn't part of what you just discussed in that.
Yep. To be honest, I don't know what a triple exponential smoothing model is, but we got feedback from marketing that we weren't including them in the process. And so we asked them, how would you like to be included in the process? And we did that by being willing to admit we were wrong. But if we wanted to change the outcome, we needed to understand that, yes, they felt like they weren't involved. And so that's the skill that's really going to kind of move the needle, I think, on planners in the future is there's the relationships and that decision to be in choice about creating the reality you want to live in.
Okay. Well, you were a great teacher today. I need to be a better student going forward. I realize I may give you a call after this. I need the help in my life. And people can reach out to you. I said you're a certified life coach as well. So, please reach out to Jessica as well. I want to thank you for being part of this. And I said, phenomenal teacher. I hope people got something out of this and take away those points and really look to see how they can build those skill sets and pick up some of these books that we mentioned and tools that we did. So thank you very much, Jessica.
Super fun conversation. So honored that we got to talk about this, which is an underserved topic in the planning community.
So true. So true. So true. So that was a fantastic interview I just had with Jessica, and hopefully she can help me out. I need all the help I can get. I understand. Just kind of bringing together everything we talked about with those softer skills. And I'm going to mention what the top three softer skills. You heard the kind of term core competencies brought up there as well. We kind of have a formula. If you look at a core competency or soft skill, add to that education times experience. That's what we talked about, going out that learning and experiencing things. Add the soft skill plus education times experience. That's when proficiency came in. So with that, let's identify what the top 3 from IBF's perspective. I asked her what her top 3 was. And number 1 she mentioned was learning agility. And guess what? That was the number 1 that you said, the members of IBF said in the survey as well. Number 1 on the list, people said we're going to need 5, 6, 7 years from now. Executives, when we asked them as well, learning agility. This person demonstrates an interest in personal learning and development, seeks feedback from multiple sources about how to improve, develop modified behavior based on feedback or self-analysis and past mistakes. That's what we put down as the definition, and that's what you said was the most important. That's what Jessica called becoming that student, having the desire to learn. And engulf yourself in information, being willing to hear the feedback, sometimes even though it's negative. Number 2 on our list, and I think is similar to what she was talking about, we called it connectiveness. This, you can visualize the links between seemingly different things and events. Critical thinking skills, another one you may look at it as well, when she looked at getting to the point of something earlier. Really, if you want to call it critical thinking and connectiveness, that's really number 2 on our list. Number 3 was more of an advanced decision making. Makes well-informed, effective, and timely decision, even when the data is limited or solutions to produce unpleasant consequences. So when you don't have all the information, you still can make a informed decision based on past experiences, based on, different things you've learned, bringing those pieces together and making an informed decision, even if it's a hard one sometimes. That's a skill set that needs to be cultivated and built, adding in experience, adding in education to really become proficient at that as well. I said this was a little bit softer. We didn't get into the weeds about, data science and technology. This was a softer podcast talking about those softer skills. And hopefully you made it to the end. And kudos to you if you're still listening to me after 26 minutes of this at this point. You're still listening. Thank you for being part of this. And hopefully you picked up something and you're going to challenge yourself. She gave you the takeaway of what you wanted to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to give you one as well. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to grow. Challenge yourself to be more than what you are right now. And the way you're going to do that is look at the things that you can improve on, such as learning agility. It costs nothing to pick up a book, listen to some other podcasts, absorb yourself. IBF has a wealth of information. I mentioned that membership as a potential, what you wanted to go after at the beginning, not just part of this community on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you're getting these podcasts, not just a member here, but a member on IBF.org as well. Being part of that 50,000 members worldwide that do want to challenge themselves and grow. Because when you become a member, you have access to a library of content that goes back decades from professionals, from top organizations that top in their field that are putting out information that you can learn and grow from. These podcasts are one thing. We have journals that come out every 3 months. We have a different research that's been done. I mentioned the research about the core competencies. There's a whole research you can find on that as well. There's a wealth of information that you can go and start learning. Learning agility is something you can cultivate by doing. That's the experience part, the education part that makes it proficient. It's also learning those other skills as far as critical thinking and being able to advance decision making. Those things can be learned as well. Start challenging yourself tomorrow. Give me feedback on your progress as well. I'm not a life coach, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody out there that is challenged, wants to know where to start. If I can't be a life coach, but I can be your friend. So reach out to me, Eric@IBF.org. And we could talk about what you're doing in your career and where you want to go. Love to hear from you. And maybe we talk about it in a future podcast as well. So reach out to me at Eric@IBF.org. It's Eric@IBF.org. And I want to thank Arkiva, your one-plan s&op software solution. They're a great resource, and they've been on board ever since the beginning of this IBF On Demand podcast. Thank them for being a sponsor. That's it. Hopefully you can see you at a future podcast. We can continue this journey together. And as always, don't forget, wash your hands.